Hello and welcome back to Hadoop Exam Learning Resources. In this session, we are going to discuss about ubiquitous language. So as you can see in this diagram, ubiquitous language is common across developer, domain expert, analyst, architect, and sales. So you must be able to develop your ubiquitous language while discussing with domain expert, and everybody who works on the project or use this software or stakeholder of this software should use the ubiquitous language. Whenever software developer talks to these people, they should not use the software terminology while talking to them. They should rather use ubiquitous language, and so that it can be easily understood by these people like domain expert, analyst, architect, and sales. Correct. So that is what when even software developer build software, they should embed this ubiquitous language in their software code as well. So when defining the class name, while defining the method name, they must use the like let's say for example, my class is for the restaurant, so and I'm going to create a class for online order, so my class name should be online order class. Correct. And in this class, if I have a method like delivery, correct, so I should use the delivery method here in the class itself. So this is basically a very easy when you work with the like a domain expert, and any new software developer join your organization or your team, then he would be able to, if he understands ubiquitous language, then he would be easily able to understand what you have written in your code, and that become very easy and very explainable to the both every party basically. Correct, what exactly your software is doing. So as we discussed, like you should be able to develop ubiquitous language as an architect or the senior developer while speaking to domain expert. This is called ubiquitous language because it is used by both software developer as well as by other team members. So that is the reason the name is ubiquitous language. Everybody using the same language. So this is not a programming language, or this is not, this is for every bounded context. Every bounded context, this is a different. Correct. This is not like uh, a programming language or something kind of. This is the language you develop while speaking to the domain expert. You will see how domain driven design works to avoid design of monolithic applications. So you should use this. It is a language you develop by interacting with the domain expert. Communication between developers and domain experts require a common language, and that is called ubiquitous language. Term in the ubiquitous language comes from the domain expert. Word originate in the domain are used in the software. Avoid taking software terms and introduce them to the domain. So the terminology which you in the ubiquitous language come from this guy, and you as an architect and as a developer while working with them generate ubiquitous language. And while discussing with all these people, this should be used always, and even in your software you would be using this language as well. Correct. So it would be very easy and become a part of your system basically overall. So ubiquitous language, as I mentioned, for every bounded context you would have specific ubiquitous language. Same here, you can see like this is two different bounded contexts, we have a different ubiquitous language. Forget about this entity aggregate domain event right now, you may not be able if you don't know. So this is, we'll discuss more when we discuss about tactical design. Right now focus on ubiquitous language bounded context. So in the above diagram, boxes inside bounded context represent the concept of the model which may be implemented as a classes. Correct. When a bounded context is being developed as a key strategic initiative for your organization, it is called a core domain, which we have discussed previously as well. So now, for example, if you're talking about the restaurant domain, so what should be your bounded context in this? Server, which serve the food, that is server, is one bounded context. Order, which is being served, that is one bounded context. Reservation is another bounded context, and customer is another bounded context. Similarly, in e-commerce application, sales, billing, support, billing address, shipping address, phone number are bounded contexts. You can have home, master bedroom, living room, garage, dining room. This you can be may or may not be, that all depend phone number, like may or may not be bounded context. They depend how you design your software and how do you want to segregate it. So you should be able to create and segregate basically. Correct. Suppose let's say if you're working with the legacy software, so legacy software should be like, you are not going to design that software, correct, because this is existing and you may not be refactoring it, or even third party or vendor application. So that could be a different bounded context for it yourself. and that would have their own that may have used domain driven design or may not used it, but you should consider the separate subdomain. So developing a ubiquitous language, domain experts are important and must help or work with the software developer or architect to come out with a common ubiquitous language. Bounded contexts, teams, and source code repository, if we talk about, so there should be one team assigned to work on the one bounded context. Usually that's not a rule, but it's like this should be, if one bounded context you're working is bigger, then one should team dedicatedly working on this. Or there should be a separate source code repository for each bounded context, and for each bounded context you will be generating new different artifacts, correct? That is what you have to. One team can work on multiple bounded contexts, but multiple teams should not work on the single bounded context. That is what you need to remember. Okay, keep your test cases and source code together. Coding multiple bounded contexts together in one repo can cause a monolithic application, which is not our target, correct? So we should avoid doing this. So now this is what ubiquitous language. I'll give you in future session the example of the ubiquitous language, and we'll come out with the domain bounded context object and all these things. So that will be more towards the end of this training session, so with the clear example which clarify exactly what and how exercise should be done. So that's all about this session, ubiquitous language. In next session I'll cover the context mapping. So this is the third and last part of the strategic tool, um, which we would be discussing in next session. Thanks for watching, and I hope you like this session. If you're watching in YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. I'm stopping now.